Preparing for the unprecedented. In a changing climate, extremes happen more often, records are broken, weather-related hazards occur that are outside anyone's experience. In 2021, there were many such extreme events. Warnings were issued, but the magnitude of the threat was not recognized. There were no plans to follow. People did not believe it could happen. The World Weather Research Programme HIWeather project has been gathering, promoting, and carrying out research into the perfect weather warning. We are publishing what we have learned in our book, Towards the Perfect Weather Warning. 2021 was a year of extremes. Many parts of the world recorded weather events that exceeded historical records, sometimes by substantial amounts. Here, we focus on floods in Europe, China, and Indonesia, and on heat waves in North America and Europe. If we look at the typical distribution of a weather variable, it follows the normal distribution, with most days clustered in the middle, near the climatological mean. With a change in the climate, we see a small shift of the mean, so most days will be slightly warmer or wetter, for instance. However, if we look at the upper tail of the rare events, we see that this shift means very rare events have become much more likely and are occurring more frequently. And previously almost impossible extremes have now become possible.
On 15 July, intense rainfall led to massive flooding in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland and Luxembourg. Rainfall records were broken by large margins. At Cologne, 154 millimeters of rain in 24 hours exceeded a previous record of 95 millimeters by more than 50%. In the upland valleys, the conditions were terrifying and resulted in death, destruction and infrastructure failure. In the lower reaches of the rivers, there were widespread floods and damage, but residents had time to evacuate. Warnings of exceptional rain were not translated into warnings of exceptional flood impacts.
On 29th June, a heat wave in the Pacific Northwest of North America produced temperatures that exceeded previous records by 5 degrees Celsius. Extreme evaporation helped to fuel wildfires that destroyed hundreds of square kilometers of forest. More than 1,400 people died from the extreme heat. The extreme conditions were well forecast and warned several days in advance, but people didn't know what to do to protect themselves.
Also in July, intense rainfall led to massive flooding in Henan province in China. In Zhengzhou city, 201.9 millimeters of rain in an hour and 624 millimeters in 24 hours broke the records in past 60 years. The sponge city was overwhelmed and 398 people are known to have died. Warnings were issued, but were not translated into productive action. Forecasts of the amount of rain diverged widely between numerical weather prediction models.
On the 3rd of August, a heat wave in the central Mediterranean broke temperature records in Greece. Extreme evaporation helped to fuel wildfires that destroyed hundreds of square kilometers of forest. Thousands of people had to be evacuated as the fires spread. Thick smoke hampered firefighting and probably caused many deaths. The extreme conditions were well forecasted and warned several days in advance. The fires were on such a scale that they exceeded Greece's firefighting resources to tackle them.
In April, intense rainfall from incipient tropical cyclone Saroja led to flash floods and landslides in eastern Indonesia and Timor-Leste. In Kupang City, over 300 millimeters of rain fell in one night. In the East Flores Islands, whole villages were swept away. 272 people were killed, and there was massive damage to property and infrastructure. Warnings were issued, but were not widely disseminated and did not refer to the expected impacts. Forecasts of the amount of rain diverged widely between numerical weather prediction model runs.
An effective early warning enables people to be prepared and to act when necessary, whether to protect themselves or to protect those they have responsibility for. This is especially important for an extreme event. The idea of an event surpassing anything previously experienced is difficult to comprehend, and people need time and repeated messaging to get used to the idea. They also need help to understand what sort of response might be needed for them to stay safe. There is every difference between a flood that makes a mess of your home and a flood that demolishes it. To achieve an effective response in an extreme situation requires careful preparation. In the long term, we know that more extremes will occur due to climate change, and so we can plan, educate, and train for these events. In some parts of the world, credible seasonal forecasts can be provided, which offer the opportunity for raising awareness of the likelihood of an extreme and of the need to be prepared. Once a specific extreme event seems possible, even at low probability, a warning to prepare to protect or to prepare to leave should be given so that when the extreme becomes more likely, people are primed, ready to act, and ready to help others to act. Finally, once the event is underway, accurate impact information can assist emergency responders to take effective response decisions. HIWeather has used this highly simplified conceptual model of the warning cycle to help define what makes an effective warning. A warning involves many people and organizations in its production, each with individual expertise. We find that at every stage of producing a warning, information is lost when it is passed on without consideration of who will receive it and how it will be used. Instead, at each stage, communication should be a two-way process, involving both the producer and the user of the information, to ensure that the user understands the significance of what they are receiving and can use it effectively in the decisions they have to make. These bridges between the different organizations involved in producing the warning and with those who will use the warning need to be built on the foundations of true partnership. So what are some of the actions we can take to help people to be better prepared for the unprecedented extreme event? We can help communities understand their vulnerability to extremes beyond those experienced. We should plan for the reasonable worst case, but have a backup plan for the unreasonable case. An effective warning can protect lives and property, reduce distress and disruption, but we must involve communities in designing the warning system so that they understand and trust the advice. We must use the best available models, data assimilation, and ensemble forecasts to provide reliable evidence for warnings. We should predict potential impacts early to justify early actions, even when the probability is very low. We should communicate possible impacts and responses early while being open about uncertainty. We should monitor responses to early warnings, for instance using social media, and use media partners to reinforce messaging if necessary. Partnerships among information producers, communicators, and decision makers are critical for early actions to be effective. And the behaviour of the recipient is the key success measure. An effective warning must be useful, usable, and used. Useful in that it provides information needed for the range of decisions to be taken. Usable in that the user receives and can understand the information. And used in that they act on the information received. Our book, Towards the Perfect Weather Warning, Bridging Disciplinary Gaps Through Partnership and Communication, is now available on open access, published by Springer. If you would like to know more, please ask me or pick up a flyer. And if you are interested in learning more about using early warnings for early action, join the Learning Lab by Anticipation Hub on Friday at 9 o'clock.